Hello, my name is Russ, and today we're going to take a very short look at Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform from a developer perspective. Now, OpenShift does have a robust CLI. As you can see here, I can log in, and you can do just about anything you want to from the CLI. But of course, a lot of developers would prefer to use the graphical user interface through the web. So let's take a look at that instead, shall we? So let's log in as our developer. And this developer has no project assigned. Now in OpenShift, everything is done via projects. So we're going to create a project for this developer. And we're going to call this new mapper. And we could give it a display name and descriptions. I'm not going to bother for this particular demonstration. And here we see the brand new project. Now it's there and it's active. There's nothing there because we just created it. So let's now fill in the blanks a bit, shall we? Now right now we're looking at the administrator view, and if you look down the left hand side you'll see that there's lots of things having to do with administration. We're going to switch over to the developer view, which is much more concise, a lot easier for developers to work from. And when you're developing, generally the project's set up for you, so you're just going to go right into this to begin. So this new mapper project, this is going to create a map of the world, and on that map of the world we're going to have a bunch of pin marks for various public parks throughout the world. Now that's going to take two different containers to pull off. So the first one we're going to pull is a container image from an existing registry. And this first one that we're going to use, we're going to load it up here. It's coming from docker.io, and we hit the little search button. And here it is. It's found it. There's information about this called Parks Map Katakoda. And we can now fill in an application name and a display name. I'm going to go with the defaults here just for the sake of this demonstration. We're going to switch to a deployment config. And normally we would create an external networking route so that people outside of OpenShift could access this application. For the moment, I'm going to turn that off. We're going to get back to that. I wanted to show you things about that in just a few minutes. So let's do a create. Now here it is being created. We see it on the topology, and I just clicked on it. And we can see the resources that are being assigned to it. And lo and behold, this container is now being created from the image that we brought in. And in a matter of a few seconds, we find there it is, it's running. So we now have a running container. Let's go back to the overview. We can see various things associated with this container. And that is now created. It's functional. Now, while we're sitting here, let's think a little bit about scaling out. Now, I've been in this industry for a very long time, and scaling out an application, at least once upon a time, could be tricky, time-consuming. You had to make sure that things didn't conflict. You had to make sure that you had enough resources, because back in the day when we would do this with VMs, those VMs could get pretty hefty, and you got to make sure that you have room for them and so forth. But with OpenShift, all we need to do is click the up arrow. And now we see that not only do we have the running container, but now we're creating a new one. And literally with that click and just a few seconds, we now have two fully running containers. Now, let's take a look at the one that we just created. And there's no graphs or anything for it yet because it just started up. But we see the information. Now, we've got these two containers. Let's also consider resiliency failover for the moment. Now, what would happen if one of these containers went down? Well, let's just go ahead and let's delete this particular pod that this container is in. And it says, do you really want to do this? And it's like, yeah, I want to do this because I'm playing show and tell. And we notice that one just terminated right away. But you notice its replacement's already being created, and just that quickly it is now up and running, and we have replaced it. It's just that simple with OpenShift, because OpenShift automatically will deal with this, with the whole notion of failover. So something just dies, if you have a bug and it dies, you can have it so that it will just immediately replace it. And, this means, your downtime is trivial or non-existent at all. So let's take a look at our situation. Right now we have a target of 2 pods and we have them both running. How do you scale down? Well, scaling down is as easy as scaling up. We hit the down arrow. Let's go over to resources. We see that this thing is now half black, half blue. And we see that it's now terminated. We're down to 1. This is now fully blue here in the center. And we are now running at the capacity that we required. So now we have one running pod. Now, a few minutes ago, I decided not to assign the networking root. Let's go back to that right now. So I'm going back to the administrator view for a moment, and I'm going down to networking roots. And it says, well, there's no route associated with this particular project, so let's create one. And we should name our root, and we'll call it just the new root because it's a demo. Now, if it's going to have an actual URL associated with it, we can put it in here. I'm just going to go with the default because I don't have some sort of domain name attached to it. Likewise, the path. We're going to select a service. Right now, we only have one service available. That's the Parks Map Catacoda. And then they want to know a target port, and we're going to select the default there as well. And with that, we're just going to create the root. And there we have it. The root has been created to the container which is running. Let's take a look at what this container is actually doing for us. So we click on this and we see Map Visualizer. It says OpenShift 3. That's when it was developed, but that's not, we're running on OpenShift 4. But now we have this actually very neat map that we can drill in on. We can drag and drop. We can actually start zeroing in. You can see sort of information about geography. And that's all real neat, but where are these parks that we want to include? So we're going to go back to the OpenShift interface. We're going to go back into developer mode. And so we've got one container running, which gives us that lovely map, but we need something more than that. We need the other piece that's going to give us the park location. So we're going to add this. We hit the add button. Now this one, rather than being a pre-made container image, is actually coming out of a Git repo. This is what our developer is actually developing right now. He's using the power of that service that we just saw and is going to add to it. And so right now we're giving it the name of the Git repo, and it's now been validated, which you see here, and it's detected certain things about it. We see that it is Python and 3.6, and we could change that if we needed to, but that's all correct. So we're going to roll down some more. And now at this point, we could give it a different application or a different name. We're going to go with the defaults because that should work. We're going to take a deployment config. And then we're going to do a create. And now we see that there's a second application being built. And so now let's click on that. And we see that our new National Parks Catacoda is coming in. Let's look at the resources. And we see that there is a build running. Let's take a look at the logs for this. So we can see that this is taking the source code from that Git repo. And it's actually doing a complete compile. It is creating a container image. It's putting it inside the registry that we have within OpenShift, and then it's going to actually deploy it into our cluster. So this is going to take a minute, but all of this is happening automatically. And if you happen to be a container developer, if you've worked with containers before, a lot of what's showing up on your screen right now should be rather familiar to you. So it's now building these things up and getting ready to actually get this thing deployed and alive. And now we see the log stream has ended. Let's go back to the overview. And we see that it's complete. Let's take a look at our topology again. And now we see that we've got 2 objects out there. And now the container is being created. So the build is complete. It's successful. And we're creating the container that's being deployed into the OpenShift cluster. And in a very short time, we'll actually have a working system. Now it is running. There we see it. It's running. So let's go back up to our map, and let's refresh. And now we see that the map is actually filled in, and we're seeing data. So let's click on one of these numbers. Let's drill in, and we are looking at the national park here, and then there's another national park over here, and so forth. And so we can now go around this map. We're in Europe at the moment. So let's pull over stateside. Let's go look at the United States for just a second. And we see that there's a national park here. We see a national park over here, and so forth. So this is what we can do. This is an example of what we can do with OpenShift. This is the end of our demo. Hope you have a wonderful day.